Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Prime Time with Sean Mooney. And I have to tell you, I'm really enjoying as we continue to expand our production content here. We love having you download the episodes on your favorite podcast platforms, whether it's iTunes. And if you do, by the way, make sure you subscribe and give us a 5-star rating and a review. We love it. But also, we've expanded. Now we're putting a lot more content on our YouTube channel, Primetime Mooney on YouTube, and we're including a lot more video. So actually, you can see this episode that we have coming up this week that we also recorded on Skype with Eli Drake, and so you get to see him as well while we're doing all this. So I know it's great. I do the same thing. I listen to my car to all my podcasts, but at the same time, it's kind of fun when you do get a chance on your laptop or something to be able to see the episode, as we did it with video. So we got a nice little setup here in the PTSM studios, as you can see, if you're watching this. But I'm having fun with it, and it's just, helping us continue to bring you more great content every week. We're coming off an episode with the NWA World's Heavyweight Champion, Nick Aldis. Another great episode with Nick as he returns to PTSM, and just great to have him back on here. And I loved it this time because of spending all this time, going over his early career and how he got into wrestling. If you want to hear all about that, you can go to the first episode we did with Nick on PTSM. But this was really cool because, we were able to focus in on some of the big influences in his life, and how it's all impacting the terrific rise that he is experiencing right now in the world of professional wrestling. And a big part of the success he's experiencing now is because, he has just a fantastic respect for the business. If you listen to that first episode, if you've heard him, talk on other podcasts or, being interviewed, he really does. He just has a great respect for the business. And he's just tremendous. One of his biggest assets is he is just tremendous in front of a camera. He really is, and believe me, I've seen a lot of people who are really good in front of the camera, and he is right up there. And you're seeing it all happen as he continues to make great gains in the world of professional wrestling, and it's all leading up to the next big event with the NWA. We've got the Crockett Cup pay-per-view happening soon in April. And, the NWA held a press conference this past week at the Gateway Center in Atlanta, Georgia, where it's going to be taking place. And if you want to really see what I'm talking about, I mean, just, that promo that we did recently where it just all hell broke loose at the GPB studios with Marty Scurll. But in this press conference, you really get to see just how he is in front of a microphone, and he goes on. I mean, it's a very long monologue, but he's just fantastic. And check it out if you haven't yet, as we get closer and closer to that great event. Another great episode on the way this week. As I mentioned, we've got Eli Drake, another very, very talented wrestler who has worked for just about every major wrestling organization, including the WWE. And we'll get into all that. And he has had some journey. We'll cover it all. That's coming up. But first, a big shout out once again to all of our Patreon members who have been really so loyal. Folks, if you're not a member yet, if you'd like to catch all of the primetime content we put out every single week. Of course, we've got Mondays, we've got the watch-alongs with the network classics, we've got original episodes of PTSM on Wednesdays, and then, of course, we have a Vault episode that we re-release from the library. This past weekend, got a lot of comments because we, brought out the episode with Sid Justice. And you laughing, Sean? Really, still sends chills down my spine. If you have not listened to that episode and you got some time, check that one out. All righty, what do you say we get to my conversation with Eli Drake? Ding, ding, ding. Hey, folks, joining me this week, a man who has traveled a pretty incredible road working along the way for some big organizations, including Impact. Of course, you've all heard about his travels there, and also with the WWE. And he is now one of the emerging stars and what has grabbed the attention of the world. I'm going to say that because it's all over the world with the internet and YouTube, and of course the world of professional wrestling with NWA Powerrr. Welcome, Sean Ricker, or I should say BKA, better known as Eli Drake these days.
Eli Drake.
Drake, yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool. You mentioned that it is available worldwide. It is talked about worldwide, and part of that's because of the distribution being on YouTube, as opposed to a traditional television network, which I think might be something that's in the works, and it kind of gives you a certain look to your status. But yeah, I think NWA is making the right move with, for the moment at least, being on YouTube because, like you said, it's universally worldwide available anytime, anywhere.
Yeah, and I had a long conversation with Dave Lagana, and then I've also spoken with Nick Aldis, and you know, uh, YouTube is an incredible platform, and you guys are getting hundreds of thousands of views on there. But they're looking at a much bigger picture here, and that's one thing I really like what Billy and Dave are doing, and of course the rest of you guys. That you see the future. Is you're on the edge of what people are going to be looking at. TV is not it. As Nick mentioned, when you broadcast something on TV, that's it. It's out there. They have demand now, but it's nowhere near the kind of reaction you get, the kind of play you get when it gets up on something like YouTube, because you may have a really great number, say when you first stream it, but then you've got people who just keep coming. It's a gift that keeps on giving. And is that kind of the way you look at it? You guys are you're on the edge of not just the future of professional wrestling, but how sports entertainment is taken in.
I think so. It's kind of punk rock in a sense. I guess
Yeah.
anti-establishment in a certain way, which whether we mean to or whether we don't, it's exactly what you said. Where when you put it on TV, it's out there and that's it. If you didn't catch it, what happened? You're probably not going to catch. I mean, of course, there's DVR, there's on demand, all that, but this is just different because YouTube, you get related videos, related watches, stuff like that. And
it's a click away too. You just get on your phone or your laptop and boom, you're watching it.
right,
You can
and
watch
you also
Power
have
right
to.
now.
And you also have to consider how many people are cutting the cable, how much more prevalent YouTube stars are becoming now, especially with younger generations. And so YouTube's really becoming a thing. Actually, just anything internet streaming is becoming a big thing as opposed to, big box cable network. And the challenge also with network TV is, what if you don't get that network? What if you don't get that channel? Hell, what if you don't have cable? But just about everybody has an internet connection, has YouTube on their phone or their computer.
Well, and then also you've got people telling you how to do it. If once you get into those kind of deals, and that's another thing is that they're controlling. You guys are controlling your own destiny here,
and that's one of the big things for Billy.
It's really
was wanting to be autonomous and have control to innovate in the space that he's given.
Yeah, and it's you guys are just on the ground floor here. You're laying the foundation, and with that said, it's not a big roster that you guys have at this point. But they were, but they were also very selective in who they brought in to launch this, and you have to feel pretty good about that. And do you feel like you really are laying the foundation for this new movement? I think is the best way to describe it.
100%. Because I mean, see, I had something with somebody on Twitter real quick the other day, which. What a mistake. But actually it ended up working out well because it was just like, they were saying like, why does it have to go back to being old? And it's like, it's not going back to being old. Wrestling's never changed. It's always been about stories. Doesn't matter what you're doing, what era you're in. It's always been about stories. So we're kind of centering more along that storyline path. And it's like, it has that old school feel, old school look in a certain sense of that set, but at the same time, very updated and just bringing in guys and girls who can tell a story, whether it's verbally or in the ring, and also making sure not to. Basically, less is more in a lot of ways. That's never been more applicable than with the NWA, and I think it's an effective approach, and I think a lot of people are picking up on that.
Yeah, and I mean, I come from that era where it was all about storytelling, and I think that's one of the biggest things missing today. And not to take anything away from the athleticism we're seeing today and what these guys are doing, but it's not enough for me. And I always feel like, okay, what's next? Take me for a ride. Tell me a story. And like you said, it's not going back to old school. It's going back to what always worked with wrestling,
It's
but you
kind
guys
of
are
a
doing it your own
recalibration.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And with so many shows going 3 hours long or 4 hours long or whatever it is, to have just that 1 hour bite, it leaves a lot of the people wanting more. I've heard
Yeah.
people say, "Oh, you guys should go 2 hours." If they're saying that, we're doing something right. If we went 2 hours, I think it'd be a mistake. Especially like you said, we have a kind of a limited roster right now. I think that's a good thing because I think that you get kind of lost in the fray when you have too many people spread over too much time. I feel like if you focus on, I don't know, I feel like if you look at great television shows, you can find a good solid crop of main characters. There's kind of some secondary characters, and then there's, the guys who are just kind of extras or features or whatever that are just one-offs. And I feel like that's a perfect way to put together a TV show, perfect way to put together a wrestling show. And so far, it's been working out in our favor.
Yeah, and with that, and we've certainly touched on it at this point, but being there and you seeing, coming in, I don't know what they told you, but did you kind of come in with your eyes wide open? Did you have an idea of what to expect, what they wanted to do? Um, what
I
was
mean,
that
very,
situation for you coming in, and how is it if it is?
very vaguely when they first approached me, it was just kind of like, we want to do something we want to be very character based. Obviously the wrestling still has to be good,
Yeah.
impactful, whatever. They were like, but we want this to be very much storytelling and characters and all that, and just show different sides of people and things like that. So other than that, I mean, they had shown me pictures of the set and the studio and whatnot, and I was like, okay, this is cool, this is different. But at the same time, I mean, I think a lot of us were just kind of going in there with zero expectation because we had zero idea of what was coming at us.
Mhm.
And just man, I can't even tell you. Like I know the people paid a good amount of money for those seats. I think it was like $100 a seat or something like that in the studio. But there was a certain point in time where like they were so reactive, where I almost had to turn and just be like, did we pay these people to be here?
Yeah, right.
Like they were so loud for everything. And that's why like even the entrance music thing, a lot of us were kind of like, oh, I don't know about this, but it was like you'd walk out and it was like the people were almost our entrance music. Cause it was like you'd hit the curtain and they'd react accordingly. And it was like you almost didn't need the music. It almost felt like a game show or something of some sort. It was really cool, different.
You know, so you've been in front of massive crowds before. You've also worked in organizations where you have this intimate crowd, but how is this different in this atmosphere?
Well, well, most of the times, quite frankly, when you're working in a crowd that's this intimate, you don't
Yeah,
have the same level of talent around you. Usually it's in an indie show with guys who are kind of, trying to figure out their thing. And now it's like we got
right.
such a deep roster of talent and guys who've been around for a long time, or maybe guys who are just on the come up. And it's just kind of, there's also like a fervor because again, like you said, like it's a little bit of old with the new, and really in a way it's a recalibration. And when
Yeah.
people hear the NWA, they get a certain thought about it, whether it's good, bad, whatever. It's the most historic, longest running organization around. Now it's had some ups, it's had some downs, but at this point, man, I feel like we're setting. I don't know what my parameters are. I almost swore there, but feel like we're setting things on fire at this point.
You can say whatever you want, Eli.
Well, then I
Just
feel like we're
let it
setting
go.
shit
No,
on
no worries.
fire.
Yeah, there we go. Okay. I want you to say what you really think.
Right.
Don't have to cover it up. But really, I mean, it is. It's. Yeah, I'm just watching it from my laptop, and I still get an idea of what that must be like, that atmosphere, because you've got this great interaction, and of course, I mean, you got me with the promos with the stick man, and and because to me that really tells a story. You got somebody
Such an
reacting
important
to you,
part.
and then you've got people coming in and out. Do you really enjoy that, doing it
It,
that
it
way?
that's the most important part of wrestling to me. I know that people, well, wrestling's on the marquee. Fine, sure it is, and obviously at the
Yeah.
end of the day, you got to be able to do that. But to me, and I think that I would say that the vast audience would also speak to this, sheerly just by numbers.
Mhm.
If you look at the biggest swells in the wrestling business, it was during the Hogan era, it was during the Attitude Era, NWO, stuff like that. Big personalities, great promos, all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
it's the promos that talk you into buying the pay per views and talk you into watching and wanting to be there. And what's this guy going to say next? What's going to happen here? So that's such a prevalent part that I think's been lost. So it's amazing to walk into that place. Everybody from top to bottom, for the most part, can handle that, handle it well, and the people reacting accordingly. Again, it's that recalibration where it's the stories. Don't let a match get in the way of a good story, because it's really the stories set the stage for the match, not the other way around.
Yeah. And with that, I know you don't have a bank of writers there. I know that's not the way they're doing this, but how are they letting you, like the freedom that you have as your character, who nobody's going to know it better than you? How does that creative work there?
The first day, Billy said something that was very freeing. Because they'll give us stuff that kind of has like a general idea of your verbiage, just so it's like, here are the points we want you to get across, whatever. But Billy said that very first day, he said, we want you to take chances. He said, with exception of, going into business for yourself and like going against the storyline that we're setting up or whatever, or creating storylines for yourself, don't do that. He was like, but within the storylines that we have set up where you take chances, like don't be afraid to make a move. And if something feels right, if it doesn't work, screw it, change it next time. But just that idea, I think, is amazing, because I don't think that that's something that's necessarily encouraged in all companies. I know at Impact, at least, they gave me the freedom to kind of, usually they could just come up to me and be like, hey, can I just get a minute out of you? I'd be like, yeah, sure, let's go.
Yeah.
And there were many times where, I can remember Sanjay Dutt or Jimmy Jacobs just saying like, man, you make my job so much easier, just because of the fact that it was like one take, good to go.
Yeah.
And so to bring that then, and again, being allowed to like take those chances and kind of take things where you want it to go within the confines of the story is an amazing thing. And at the same time, that you don't have somebody feeding you lines, which I guess could be a tool, because some people want to, eventually branch off into acting. I know I would like to, so maybe I should be better at that at some point. But within that wrestling audience, when you're dealing with a live audience, a live crowd, I don't think you can go scripted lines. Live audiences and live crowds, you got to be able to think on your feet and ad lib.
Yeah, and I was going to bring that up because having done hundreds of these interviews and seeing the talent, and there are the talent that you can tell them, okay, you got to say this, and they may be able to memorize it, and that's awesome. They may be able to do that well. Then you got the other where they can ad lib. They might have 4 or 5 bullets, that they're going to hit, and they just know how to roll through them. I put you at that next level because, and I could name an example, not only be able to do all that, but like feet, play off the crowd. And I think, what comes to mind is that when they brought the question mark out and you said, and they're chanting question mark, question, and you said, well, I got an exclamation point for you. And I said, man, those are the guys that you want out there, because no matter what happens, it's not just they're going to come back with a line, but it's going to be a good one. And is that something that you've always had, and then this is your, the chance to really show people? Or
well, that was all completely planned. They actually got the whole crowd to chant question mark, and they wrote that line for me to say exclamation.
They had it on a cue card. They had a card right by the camera. Yeah.
No, I'm completely kidding. Yeah, I mean, it's just, if they're going to give me stuff, I got to be able to. If I'm the guy that those people are paying to watch, and I can't outsmart them, then I shouldn't be doing this job. And I would say that for the vast majority of guys. But if that's the case, then you probably shouldn't be touching the microphone, because I think that's what differentiates us from the people that come to watch us, and that's why they come to watch us, because we are on another level, whether that's athletically or verbally or whatever. I don't know. It's just a really, it's a great tool, and I don't think enough guys work on it as they're coming out. I don't mean to sound preachy or whatnot. It's just like, if you're out there and you're up and coming and wrestling, man, you better start working on some promos, because anybody who's ever made money, who's made real money, those are the guys who were the best promos ever. Flair, Hogan, Rock, Austin, and Cena, any of those guys.
Yeah, and I know that Rock and Steve were big influences on you. And you know what it comes down to, and I think the same thing happened to them when they had the turning point in their career. Is that, and you said this a little before, you got to let go, and until you let go and trust yourself that you're gonna be able to jump out of that plane, and you're gonna land okay, you're not gonna get there. And I
The
think that,
amount of
like you said,
times
there's people out there that won't take that risk, and they never get to that point.
the amount of times that I've literally been walking around just before I'm going out there, and I'll look at somebody and be like, I don't know what I'm about to say, but we'll find out. Uh, but I will say this: if you've established certain things, it makes it a lot easier. Um, like the Rock can always start every promo with "Finally, the Rock has come back to whatever the city is,"
Yeah.
and he ends it with "If you smell what the Rock is cooking." Steve Austin, he's going to end all his promos with "That's the bottom line because Stone Cold said so." So if you have those little pillars in your promo where you can drop in, man, it makes it a lot easier to fill that space in the middle.
Yeah. Beginning, middle, end. You got the beginning and the end already. So whatever you put in there it's like an accordion, right? Sometimes it just
Bingo.
goes. Yeah. And
It's
that's
tough.
yeah, but those guys are classic at that. And I think that if you look at their stuff before and as they're coming up, and you know, you can certainly attest to this when you're trying to get some footing, at least get some TV time. You just don't want to make the mistake. And I think those guys both got to a point in their career, they said, you know what, fuck it, I'm just going to, and whatever happens from this point, and that changed everything for them. Seems like that probably happened to you a while ago.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can't really worry about the mistake or the trip up
Yeah.
or whatever. Sometimes the mistake can be kind of a blessing in disguise in a certain way, because especially if you're a heel and you mess up, you can use that for a second. You can use that as fuel. A lot of guys will kind of tighten up under that once that happens, but that's a time to just kind of turn, maybe give a look to the crowd, and maybe somehow find a way to put it on them.
Mhm.
Um, something like that, or even if you're a baby face, there's a way to work that too. But sometimes it's just you take a pause, and that pause is placed at the right time, where it's just kind of like it can work, it can be effective, but at the same time, it gives you a second to not trip over whatever you're about to say. It's just little things here and there that at this point, it's not even a conscious thought. It's just, I guess it's like muscle memory at this point, where you're just kind of like, let's go.
Yeah, but it isn't something that happened to you overnight.
No,
And with that,
no.
I love the path. And I think you grew up in Maryland, and then via Cincinnati. A lot of things happened along the way. But growing up, was wrestling a big part of your life? Did it come later? Were you just an athlete? I mean, what was the path to the ring?
Brother, let me tell you this. When I picked up my phone when you called and I heard that voice, that was the voice of many a Saturday mornings for me. Uh, so hearing Sean Mooney, like I didn't even have to see a face. I was just like, wow, this is crazy. I've been watching wrestling since before I can remember. My dad always watched it. His whole side of the family. So my mom hated it, but my dad and his whole side of the family watched it. And so it was just like everything that was on, whether it was NWA, WWF, AWA was on for a little bit, I think on ESPN. World Class was there for a minute. We were watching every single piece of wrestling that was on, and I just became enamored with it. I played athletics. I played basketball, baseball, football, ran cross country one year. My senior year, ended up doing pretty well with that. Um, I was in the drum line, and I know people would be like, "Oh, yeah, that's what," but that was some tough shit. Believe it or
Yeah.
not, you walking around carrying this, probably 60, 70-pound drum on your chest, and you got to stand at attention all damn day long, because we would literally practice from 8 in the morning to 12, take a break for lunch, go from 1 to 4, take a break, then go from 6 to 9. And it was no joke in the summer times. But anyway, but
Well, no,
doing all that,
but not anyway, though, in a sense, because you bring that up, that it wasn't just drumline. I mean, the things you learn there, discipline. I mean, what
100%.
what are the other things of doing this where that comes into play in other things that you end up doing in life? And I'm sure that was a part of it, because you had to commit. It was something you had to answer the call. You had to be there. And like you said, it wasn't easy. Well, people could
Well, I mean,
downplay it, but there's a
like
lot
we
to
were,
that.
yeah, I know. I guess I just feel like everybody hears like drumline. They're like,
Yeah.
what?
He's in
But
the
no, man.
he was in the band. Hulk was in the band too. So
Right. But I mean, but like we were like a championship drum line. Like we were like
really,
serious shit. So it was like
yeah.
if you messed up, it was like, all right, well, we're gonna start that over. If you mess it up again, we're gonna drop the drums. Now we're gonna do a bunch of push-ups. You drop if you mess it up again, now we're gonna do roll stroll. And the roll stroll is like you're doing a drum roll for probably good 20 minutes to 30 minutes because we're gonna go all the way around the school. Okay. And when we're doing it, you're going forward, then we're going to go sideways on our toes, backwards on our toes, and right on our toes until we get back to where we started. It was a bitch.
Yeah.
It was awful, but you learn to kind of go through that pain. You learn to kind of deal with that, get better at what you were doing, work with the guys around you and girls around
I
you
mean, yeah.
to make everything work. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, people want to dismiss that, but that was just as instrumental in any kind of discipline that I've had as far as athletics or just fitness or wrestling or anything else. Because when I went to the WWE tryouts back in 2013, they run your ass, they drill you into
Yeah.
the ground, and it was really, honestly, in a way, reminiscent of that because while the rest of the band was slacking off, we were standing there at attention with these heavy ass drums on our bodies. So it just kind of felt similar, I guess, in a way.
Why not music? It sounded like that was a big part of your life. Why not?
It didn't catch me as I mean, look, I mean, I've always wanted to be a singer, but I'm just not that good.
Yeah.
And I've lost my voice over the last few years. I don't know what happened. I used to have a great voice, but anyway, I mean, I play drums on occasion. I've sat in with a couple bands. I actually made my own entrance music.
Really?
And yeah, so like Impact had like some music for me. It was
Yeah.
okay, but I was just like, man, I want something that I feel. I want my own thing. So I ended up making my own music. So now that I made it, I own it. I can take it anywhere with me. So I debuted at NWA with it. We don't use music right now, so it doesn't
Yeah.
matter anyway. But
Yeah.
I had that talent and that ability, but I guess it just never occurred to me to be a career because it was like I always wanted to be a wrestler. Always, always,
Really?
always.
So you're in Maryland. I mean, how did you end up training in Cincinnati? I mean, how did that connection work? What happened?
I didn't know where to start wrestling, but when I get interested in
Because you
something,
went
I
to
get
school too. Right? You went to college.
at West
Yeah.
Virginia University for
Yeah.
about a
And
year and a half,
okay.
and I was forced to drop out. My parents had gotten divorced. Things kind of got a little haywire, and I basically couldn't get any loans to go for the second year. So because of
Mhm.
finances or lack thereof, I basically had to drop out. And so I went back home for about maybe about a year, worked some odd jobs and stuff like that. And then during that whole time, I'm like researching everything. Like, where can I go? And there was a wrestling school in my hometown in Hagerstown, Maryland, but it just, I don't know. I went and checked it out, and it just did not look good. None of the guys looked like they were worth anything, and I don't mean to offend anybody there, but it looked bad. Everything about it looked awful. The ring was against two walls. The ceiling, you could barely probably pick somebody up to give them a body slam.
Yeah.
And so, I decided to call, of all things at 19 years old, I decided I'd just call WWF headquarters. Um, and I tried to get in touch with somebody in talent relations. I don't know who ended up answering the phone, but I asked if they had any wrestling school they could recommend. They
Hmm.
said, we can't officially do that, but there's OVW in Louisville, Kentucky. That's our developmental area. And I said, well, screw it. That's where I'm going to go. A friend was looking out for me. She found out that also HWA was a developmental territory at the time in 2002. I checked that out, but I kind of put it on the back burner. But when I got to OVW, I wasn't really feeling it. Went to HWA, I really dug it. And it was probably like maybe 6 months after that, in January 2003, that I moved there. Started training in March 2003. And so it was just kind of like, in my mind, I was thinking, if WWE trusts their guys to go here, then that's where I want to go.
Mhm.
That was the basic thought process of my 19-year-old self, and why I ended up in Ohio as opposed to anywhere else in Maryland.
Yeah. And it's never easy when you start. Why'd you stick with it? And when did you really feel like this is something you could do?
Well, I didn't have anything else to do. I mean, it's not like I had any big job prospects out
Yeah.
there. There wasn't really any family inheritance or any business or anything. I mean, my dad worked for a trucking company. My mom was a branch manager at a bank. So it was just kind of, I don't know, man. I was in love with it, and I feel like I picked it up pretty quickly as far as some of the in-ring stuff. And like I said, I was always enamored with the characters and just talking trash and being able to, go back it up or whatever. So it was kind of like I was just interested in getting out in front of a crowd. And so I think they finally let me do it very quickly, which was completely out of the ordinary for them. But it was I got really lucky. Part of it was my look. I made sure that I didn't start wrestling until I was like over 200 pounds, because a lot of the guys that I'd seen and a lot of guys you see now like aren't even close to that. But to me, like, wrestlers were always big dudes. And so I was like, well, I got to at least be in the range somewhere. So at 6'1", I was like, at least if I'm 200 pounds, I'll look somewhat there, and I can, as I progress, just get the rest of the way. And so, I came in, looked decent. I was lean, okay body at 200 pounds, but some of the guys were pretty, big and jacked there. But I don't know, man, because of a lot of that and because I had some personality, they kind of ended up plugging me in with this one group. And it was just kind of a lucky break. Obviously, they protected me as best they could, because I couldn't do much at 3 months in, but they started putting me on the shows, and it was just like, man, you get hooked.
That's where you learn.
Yeah. And so it's just doing these little local shows where, they had local TV and stuff like that. They put me there. I'd get to do some, goofy antics out there. And I was kind of the fall guy for this, kind of the goof of this group. And it was just addictive. And from there, it was like, well, hell, this is going to go somewhere. I knew I had something to offer.
Yeah. Well, and it's not saying that success happened overnight, but you did get the attention of the WWE within 5 years, which I mean, from stepping into a ring and then getting noticed by them. What was that first experience like with the company?
It was cool, actually. I mean, it was amazing because what was that? It was in Columbus, Ohio. It was in May of 2006. I did a you get to come in as extra talent and whatnot. And we were working out during the day, and it ended up being me and John Moxley against the Big Show in a squash match. It was on like Heat. And that was crazy because we were like one of the first things that anybody saw that night. And we're in like a 20,000 seat arena. And, you getting squashed out by the Big Show, but who cares? He's like the biggest, one of the biggest stars on the show. And it was just amazing to be in there and doing that. Yeah. And so at the time, like, he was really awesome, really cool, good guy. And he was like, oh, I'm going to vouch for you guys and whatnot. It didn't go anywhere. But at the same time, I also didn't know how to ask for it. At that point, it was like I would just follow up with trying to get more extra stints instead of just being like, hey, guys, how do I get a job? What do you need from me? How can I improve? What do I need to do to get myself in developmental or on TV or whatever it is? And I never did that because I just didn't, I guess, know how, or didn't have whether it was courage or whatever it was. It wasn't there. So I just kind of floundered around for the next couple of years and tried to get more extra spots.
Yeah, but it's interesting you say that, because a lot of guys I've talked to about those experiences, and they say the same thing, is that looking back, you're young, you haven't experienced that level to that point, and you might get a bit of a push or whatever, but then you don't want to be this guy who's bugging the crap out of them all the time, and then you don't want to be the guy that nobody pays attention to. But there's no real answer to that, because for exactly that reason. You feel if you're a pain in the ass or you bug them too much, you're going to say, geez, get rid of this guy. But at the same time, if you don't sell yourself, and I mean, I've heard that time and time again, but I don't know what the answer is, because you never know that. I used to love when people would say, well, you want to get in with Vince, man, you got to stand up to him. And like, really?
I could tell you what the answer was in 2006. It was that I needed to be bigger. I was probably only 210 at the time. I mean, I looked decent, and now you go, if I went to any indie show at 210, I'd be one of the biggest guys in the show. But in 2006, man, everybody was huge. And so that's like the one thing that I had going against me, and probably the reason that, probably my biggest challenge. But it's funny that you mentioned that whole thing about not being annoying, because I remember being out here in California for an extra stint, and some of the agents were there talking to some of the talent, and they were saying, feel free to call us, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. At the same time, don't be annoying. And they named a guy that I knew from Ohio. And I was like, ooh, I was like, okay. So you don't want to call him too
It'll be
much,
that
obviously.
guy. Yeah.
Right. Because as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh, damn. Okay. He messed up. But
Yeah.
so you got to find that fine line. But at the same time, of course, you get so many guys who just, they go out of their way and fawn over and bring in. And at the meantime, you're like, hey, I'm over here.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
hey.
I can do it. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And so I don't. I mean, like I said, 2006 probably up to about 2010. I feel like the business was still bigger as far as body size then, and it's kind of weaned off since then. But that was the biggest thing I had going against me at that point.
Yeah, and you've also I heard you mention in the interview with Steve that you you shot yourself in the foot along the way with things that would happen to you. And do you feel that along the way that's cost you like specific times, or was it just a matter the process of who you've become? You know what I mean? That you look back and say there were specific instances that would have changed the course of my path.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And that's one of them because in 2008, man, they were on me. Like Jamie Noble was making sure that he was making sure I was always, because they got me set up with an extra gig. And at the end, it was like December of 2008. They liked me in DC. They were like, hey, we want you to come back the next week. And so now they were seriously talking about signing me. And so that second day, as I said on Steve's podcast, was like, I showed up an hour late, like an idiot. And at that point, they didn't talk to me for like 2.5 years or something. Like they wouldn't return a phone call, email, nothing. And but if I look back at my life, I've been awful at showing up on time for anything. Now that was just that was so dumb and preventable. But I mean, every day I'm late to everything. I used to
It
get
wasn't
in
it
school.
wasn't self-sabotaging. I mean, if you look back, we'll get on the couch here, and
I mean,
you
could
think you
be. Who
really were afraid of
knows?
that success?
Could be. Who knows? I don't know. But I mean, even back in
No?
school, like I would get in school suspension, which is a thing where they'd kind of lock you in a room and you'd have to write these papers, just as busy work all day as your punishment. And my in school, the only reason I ever got it was because I was late to classes. So if you were late to class three times within a marking period, you'd end up getting in school suspension. Well, I got in school suspension probably twice a marking period because I was late so many damn times. So it's just character flaw, personality flaw. I don't know. Um, I'm the worst at it. And then it stresses me out and I get angry and then it costs me time. Because at that point I'm thinking like, man, 2008, I could have been in there. I think especially at that time, the guys were bigger, but the work I don't think was as solid as it is now. And it still also lacked the promo work, I feel like, for
Yeah.
the most part. So with my unique package of talent, I think I would have definitely stood out then. And I think I could have succeeded. And man, I'd probably be. I mean, I'm doing okay. I've done well for myself, but man, I can't imagine the different level I would be on had that gone down differently.
Well, and I'll tell you, man, Sean, when I look at you, and I was, and especially like what you're doing now, but I look at you and the presence you have, and I'm like, where has he? Why isn't he one of those guys that like that Steve and I know, or Rock, or and I know planets have to line up for anybody, any of them. I mean, I don't, you got to have the talent, you got to have the ability, but planet's got to line up for it to just happen like that. I mean, it's just the way it is. But I look at what the hell, and I'm really good friends with Chris Chambers, and I pretty sure you know him from your days
Yep.
there. And I said the same thing to him because I was wondering when I first started watching Powerrr, and he goes, I don't know. I mean, because he had it all. He has it all. He did, and he goes, and Chris is really good. He's a real good judge of creative. When he sees it, and that's what he said about you. He's like, but there are guys that just fall in that crack, and you can't explain it. And I don't know. I imagine you've lost some nights of sleep, but you should have the comfort of that. You've had it, you've got it.
Well, yeah, and thank you. And Chris has always been really good to me and really complimentary. I've always appreciated it. He's been amazing in other ways. Just I think I have too much of my dad in me.
Mhm.
My dad was the first person I ever heard use the term mealy mouth, and
Yeah.
there's just something about there's something that makes me crazy when I find out I have heat or whatever, and I've already known, I can tell, I can feel it, and I'll go talk to somebody, hey, what's the heat here? And it's happened in two different companies, and they'll baby face me and say, oh no, there's no heat, there's no heat. And then the same stuff starts happening, and I hear second and third hand that there's massive heat, and I'm like, can somebody just come talk to me?
Yeah.
And then and I'm not very good at hiding how I'm feeling, and not that I'm they're mouthing off or whatever, but I'm gonna look unhappy. I'm probably gonna do stuff that might ruffle some feathers. I remember just before I got released from WWE, they had me doing this thing where I was well, I created it, but I was like playing the song, asking why I wasn't on TV, just singing about it or whatever. And
Uh,
before I sang the song, I dedicated the song to my friend who couldn't be there tonight, and I said, "Well, this one goes out to you, huge asshole." And crowd laughed for it, whatever. Uh, but Bill thought I was saying that to him because he was Hugh Morris, and I didn't even put that together
uh,
beforehand. And I was
uh,
like, "Oh shit, no, that had not, I just thought it was a funny line." So, before I got fired, they named, me saying huge asshole on one of the shows was one of the things I guess they were saying they were angry I got fired about. But I was kind of doing that because I thought of, have you ever seen Private Parts, the Howard Stern movie?
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so you know the part where Pig Vomit is trying to get him to quit. They're just trying to make his life a living hell, and
Yeah.
just to kind of like stick it to him in a sense, they play the match game, and it's like Blanka Doodle Doo, and they're like cock and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that was in a way kind of what I was doing, was prodding the bear, where I was just kind of like, all right, I'm going to go out and say. I had a whole list of like inappropriate names like that, like Hugh Jessel or Lou Skunt or like dumb, stuff like that, where I was just like, all right, let me throw this out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it was just kind of like, I want to piss him off without actually doing anything wrong. So yeah, maybe I'm my biggest enemy. Maybe I'm a giant asshole, but there's never been a moment in time where I've been like a true fuck you asshole, where I'm like I've never been a dick to anybody. I've never tried to like cut somebody's legs out. Nothing like that. But am I bad with authority? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe that's another person. I'm late to shit, and I'm not very good with authority. I don't know.
Yeah.
So maybe
Well,
that's my problem.
yeah, but what also surprises me, and it's just true in entertainment. If you know comics, if you know other actors, I'm sure, of course, and you know, wrestlers are no different. They are performers, and it always amazes me that they're like, God, he's so, when he's out there and he's doing it, he cuts these great promos, and he's just like this quiet guy. I mean, I've heard him like talk about comics who, there are these are people. All right, did you ever think that that's just who they are? It doesn't mean they're an arrogant asshole. It's just
Right.
who they are. And
100%.
it just seems like you talk about that people just thought, wow, I didn't know you were a nice guy when they finally get to know you.
Yeah, and it's so funny because essentially I got fired from WWE because of the perception that I was an asshole. But the perception only lied with
Uh,
like the perception was with one person, and
uh,
that person wrote the reports, so then that spread that perception. But the people who I actually worked with and who I was actually with on a daily basis would have completely said the opposite. And I could say that for each and every one of the coaches who were there at the time.
yeah,
At the same time, they say perception is reality, and it's like, no, it's not. If you're operating off the idea perception's reality, what that means is now you're essentially saying that I believe this person's an asshole, even though I've never met them. Who's really the asshole in that scenario?
yeah,
Just saying.
yeah.
But
Just saying.
regardless, like I also think of like, okay, because even when I was talking to certain guys behind the scenes there, they were like, I don't get it. You got everything. You could talk, you can work, whatever. They're like, obviously you must have some heat. I hear the rumbling is that like people think you're a jerk or whatever. He's like, I don't really care, because if you can sell tickets, that's the name of the game. And I was like, I agree with you. And I seem to hearken back to Shawn Michaels, who has a a reputation for being a giant jerk. I believe I recall hearing that Bret Hart might have been difficult to work with. I don't know. I hear that Steve Austin might have been difficult to work with at some point. I'm not sure. But all these guys were doing their job. They were selling tickets. They were making money for the company. And they weren't causing, giant, huge problems for the company. And I certainly would have never done that either. Would somebody read me the wrong way because maybe I forgot to shake somebody's hand, or maybe I didn't talk as much as they might like? Sure. But never in 1,000 years would I walk in and be some asshole who's like, oh, hey, how you doing today? Hey, fuck you.
Yeah.
It's not me.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's a lot of silliness. I don't know if it's ego stuff or what, but obviously the perception is that it's ego stuff on my part. Maybe it is. Who knows?
Well, you've kept
I'm doing
working
well.
and,
That's all I know.
yeah, and I don't know if you feel how whatever your road is destiny, or how you take in how things come in. But what did that experience with TNA, or we should say Impact Wrestling? I don't know if your relationship with Billy started at that point in time, but what was that experience like for you?
Working with Billy, or just the entire
Well,
Impact experience
Impact
altogether?
and yeah, and then I don't know when you
Well, yeah,
guys
that was pretty
connected,
much
or
that was pretty much where I met Billy.
yeah.
He was pretty complimentary my work from the start, and we'd always gotten along backstage, and just stand around talking about whatever life stuff. But I mean, the experience in Impact was great. I mean, I guess I could say it was one of the highlights of my career at this point, because it was a great place to kind of I guess travel. I traveled the damn world. I went to India for the first time ever. I went to the UK a couple times with them. I think I went to Japan with Noah through them. Got to do a lot of cool stuff, and getting to work with guys like Scott Steiner and things like that. It was really cool. So I can't say a lot bad about it. Just those last couple months were a little wonky. But
Yeah.
what can you do?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and relationships that you carried from there. Was it during that point where you felt, you said it was one of the best experiences? I don't, what do you, I guess the word, at peace with who you were and what you were doing in the ring. I've just always wondered, is there a point in your career where you reach it and say, okay, or is it always up that hill still?
It's never not up the hill. Because there's a lot of people who would see, either they'd see what I was doing on Impact, or they see what I'm doing now in NWA, and they're like, maybe I haven't talked to them in a while, or maybe, we lost connection, and it's like all of a sudden they pop back, or they might see something and be like, oh my gosh, it's so great, you finally made it. And I'm like, I don't know if I'll ever feel like I made it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what made it is. I guess until I'm at the point where I feel like I can just say, you know what, I'm good. I don't have to work ever again a day in my life. Maybe that's when I could say I made it. I don't know. Not that I'd
Yeah.
probably stop working at that point, but
Yeah. No, that's always a good thing, I guess. It's talking to Aaron, he never gets nervous for promos, and to me, I've always been one of those people. If I don't feel a little bit of that edge before, then at the end, then I'm not there. I probably shouldn't be doing it. But it sounds
yeah,
like you still feel that
I
way, and I don't know what your process is.
every time. Yeah, I mean every
Yeah.
time, because I mean I it's funny because when they were kind of setting up all the locker rooms and everything, David Lagana had made a joke about how there's plenty of room for me to pace, because that kind of gets me into the feeling like I almost feel like an animal of some sort. Because it's like once I start pacing and I start getting the walk, it's really like once I start feeling a certain walk, I start feeling more into the zone of what I'm doing. So it's like I start getting that walk in the backstage area, and then it's like once I start going, then my mind starts going. It's like, okay, let's roll with this. And then that kind of gets the intensity going. And so yeah, I mean, I'm amped up. There's a little bit of nerves going, but once I hit the curtain, that's all gone. But all that lead up beforehand, hell yeah, that all exists there, because it's like I want to knock that out of the park every single damn time. You're not going to do that, but if I can have a decent batting average, then we're doing okay.
Yeah, and we talked about this roster, but tell me about it from your viewpoint. What each of these people have brought to power to the NWA. People like Nick Aldis and Tim Storm and Aaron and Thunder Rosa. And it seems like a great combination of personalities.
Well, first of all, I mean, Nick's been the guy to kind of do it on his own for a good little bit here. And I mean, I guess you throw Tim into the mix as well, but I guess the face of the company for a while has been Nick, and Tim has kind of been instrumental in that as far as, I guess doing the honors, if you will, and kind of also coming back around to kind of help legitimize and keep things rolling forward. While that's also happening, it's like everybody who's come in has a decent understanding, I feel like, of what we're trying to do and what we are doing, and to me, it's just, again, different from anything else that's happening right now on wrestling TV.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's something that talent has to get and understand in order for it to be different. And everybody, for the time being, has killed on that standpoint. And again, you mentioned Thunder Rosa, a girl who has amazing. I think she's got great promos. She looks solid in the ring, man. I don't think I'd want to take half the shots that she was dishing out a week ago. So it's
in
again,
MMA.
well, there's that too. Yeah, but no, I mean, even the match she had on Power, I think it was a tag match or something. She was just nailing those chicks.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's just that everybody understands what we're working toward and what we're trying to do. I think a big help for that was Billy kind of outlining his vision, because we all had like a decent idea coming in, but the first day in Atlanta, we really, really started to get it. And part of that was the meeting we had beforehand. And then the bigger part of it was learning by doing. As we were doing it, it was kind of, okay, I get what this is. I get where we're going with this. And so just having everybody on board makes everything so good.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I love watching these characters develop, which you guys are allowing to happen. And it's as we mentioned at the top of this conversation, it's not like what's old is new. It's not necessarily like that, but in a sense, it is with introducing these characters. People, you get people like Trevor Murdoch, who he's like a throwback to Dusty in a sense. He's not like the cut body, but you see him go out there and he's a great hand. I mean, the matches I've seen, I've been like, wow, this guy can still get it done in there. But also, the other guys, and everybody is completely different than the next. Like Ricky Starks, that kid. I mean, I think he's going to be a star. You got guys like you that have this presence. To me, it's like The Rock. But everybody's different, and like I said, they're allowing these characters to develop. It's not like it's just throwing it in your face and here it is, and it's just gonna, and so people are following along with it, and it's to me, it's old time storytelling, and that's what's been missing for me in sports entertainment, as we call it now.
100%. I just think a lot of the guys coming up too are getting stuck on moves, and it's just like, what cool
how many
moves
times
can I
you
do?
flip off how many flips can you do?
And that stuff's cool here and there, but again, it's what's in between the moves. That's the beef. That's the stuff that matters. Everything else is fluff. Like, you got to have good, solid moves. I get that, but at the end of the day, who are you? What are you doing in between? What's your intent?
Where do you see it going? Because we touched on a little bit earlier about other platforms. I know that they're going to add another show. I mean, where do you see it all heading?
Man, that's really tough to tell, because I really didn't even know where it was all going to start, to be quite frankly. To be quite frank, excuse me. And I mean, I've talked not at too long a length with David Lagana and Billy about the little ins and outs of it, but Billy has said that there have been network offers, different networks to do this and whatnot, but the problem is they always want to have a a stake in it. They want to have maybe an ownership or something like that. And like, he just doesn't want to give that up. So
Yeah, with that comes
finding,
control, to an
right.
extent.
So,
Yeah.
so finding the right deal where he can still keep full control, full stakes, whilst also being on X network. I don't know, man. I mean, that's kind of the thing at this point. And I feel like we're growing every week. Of course, there's going to be ebbs and flows, and everything isn't always going to move up in a straight line. You're going to have corrections and back down and back up and whatnot. But I think it's going to continue to grow. You look at the subscriber numbers now, man. It's tough to tell at this point, but I'm pretty sure we've got some great upward trajectory.
Yeah, and at the same time, you say that it's going to grow, but then how do you keep that same feel? Because, like you said, it's this pretty, it's not a small roster at this point, but, are they going to keep adding more? And then do you start getting this big time feel for it? Are you going to need a bigger studio if they're going to keep the same format? But, that's kind of the question here. Will they be able to still keep it at that, the way it is now, when
If
it's
it,
going to, take off more and more?
if it was my company, and it's not,
Yeah.
I would do it kind
Just
of the
saying.
old, right? I would
Yeah.
kind of do it the old NWA style, where it's like we continue to do the studio shows week in, week out. And those shows are set up to sell the bigger arena shows where we might go and do, like last year they did the NWA 70th anniversary, where they went to the National Fairgrounds and did very, very well.
Mhm.
Or the Crockett Cup or something like that. So if we can do the studio shows week in and week out, they're in such high demand where it's like we could probably fill a bigger area. Maybe we could grow from that. I don't know, but I think it's kind of cool to have that, keep people clamoring for the larger live shows. Then you've got something, a big show feel for like a pay-per-view or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
Um, but I mean, nobody likes to eat in an empty restaurant, right? So
Yeah.
it's kind of like, you see a lot of bars and clubs and stuff like that. It might not be full inside, but sometimes they'll keep a line. Well, if it actually is full inside and they've got the line outside, then you're doing something right. And I feel like that's something that we could eventually be at, where it's like the seats are sold out, people are still trying to get in, but here's your chance. We're gonna have a big arena show at this pay-per-view or da 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 da, whatever. I think that that's a possibility for us in the future, and especially again looking at even just the last year with the Crockett Cup and the 70th anniversary. I think that that's a very reachable goal just in the next year, if not sooner.
Yeah. No, and I think that's awesome. I hope that that's the way it stays, because, like you said, every week don't get away from this intimate feel to it, because when you tune in, you feel like you're part of that intimate crowd.
Right.
So you can have the same feeling, and then, like you said, blow it out with the pay-per-views or these other events that they have. But the show that is, I guess, the flagship is keep that feel, and I
Well,
think
it's
that's why
interesting.
people are enjoying it so much.
Well, it's interesting too because when you walk into the studio, you're almost encouraged to interact right away
Yeah.
as one of the
Yeah.
fans. Because I remember being kind of critical of the whole setup, because when they first came in, I thought it sounded like a church in there, and there was no music playing. It was very quiet in there. And I was like, man, these people are going to get so bored.
Yeah.
And Dave Marquez or somebody else was out there, kind of just talking to the crowd on the microphone, and like question answer kind of things. And I was like, man, this is not gonna be good. The crowd's gonna be dead. Actually, I was wrong, and it ended up being the complete opposite, because what happened was people then wanted to just answer his questions and whatnot, and it kind of got them warmed up. Instead of doing the can warm ups where it's like, you guys are going to be on TV, 3, 2, 1. It was more like, let me ask you an organic question. Let me ask you something real. Give me a real response. And now you're going to be more opened up. You're going to be more warmed up to actually giving me a real emotional response once the show starts. And it actually worked out really well. So that little intimate environment like that is an amazing thing, where every single person can be uniquely involved.
Yeah, and what are you finding with these crowds or people you're hearing from? I'm sure that you're getting people that love the feel of it because they watched, back in the day, as they say. But I see that you're also getting a lot of young people that are getting turned on to it. And have you seen that happening?
Well, yeah, I mean, because like you said, that there's a lot of people who I haven't seen wrestling in 20 years. You guys have
Yeah.
gotten me back into it, or this reminds me of when I used to watch with my father back, whatever. And there are a lot of young people, and I think with young people, it's kind of the idea of retro can be cool, and we have that retro look in a certain sense, that retro style,
Oh
even
yeah.
though it's still new and evolved.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you also like what's different and what's new is kind of cool, and even though it's kind of a reach back to the past in certain senses, it is new. And new a lot of times is cool, especially if you're bringing some actual substance to what you're doing. It's not just the style; you got to also have some substance behind it. And I don't know. I feel like that's gravitating people of all ages because again, you've got the nostalgia factor plus the newness factor. Because again, it looks different than any other wrestling happening on TV right now.
Yeah, and so is it more that you just like where you are, what's going on with this company, or also or that you feel that man, we're on to something?
Yeah, I mean, that's the funny thing is that like again that very first match I had out there and how hot the crowd was, I was like, if this is any indication of what the viewership is going to be like and the
Mhm.
actual audience watching the show, like this is going to be amazing. And so far, I mean, of course, we're not setting the world on fire with numbers or anything, but we're doing really, really damn well. And the buzz is huge, and it's putting us on I guess it's putting us in the eye of a lot of people who I wouldn't have expected, and I don't think a lot of us expected. I mean, even the Rock, I think, mentioned something about it after the first episode. So
Yeah. Well, and
it's
Steve
really cool
Austin,
that it.
Steve Austin's put the word out there too, man. That's he likes it. So there's a lot of people watching. There really is. Um,
Right. It just has it's got that different feel to it. It's almost like a at this point it's almost like a cult following, and
yeah,
I think
that's
it's going to
but everybody loves
grow.
that. Yeah. Right.
Right.
They want to feel like they're part of they were there when it happened, you know.
Yeah,
Uh,
I dig it. Like I said, it's punk rock, it's rock and roll, and I always like being part of something different.
yeah. Hey, how can folks get in touch with you? Please give us all your social media handles.
Catch me on Twitter and Instagram at the Eli Drake. Of course, if I could plug my old wrestling tees, pro wrestling tees shop, it's prowrestlingtees.com/Eli Drake.
Mhm.
And of course, you can catch me every Tuesday at 6:05 p.m. on NWA Powerrr.
Yeah, have you got the new T-shirts out? I mean, can people? You got the new NWA Power shirts that Eli Drake? Or are you're still mulling over that
I think I'm.
that product? I know
We're,
it hasn't been
we're,
easy for you.
we're, we're, we're still figuring it out. They've sent me some designs. I've sent them some
You,
designs.
you're so damn difficult. See?
I know, right? I want to make sure that if I'm going to wear it, it's something that I like and I want to wear, so that way I know that the people are going to like it. So, but yeah, well, so far it's the prowrestlingtees.com/Eli Drake, but there will be on the NWA website as well.
All right, Sean, Eli Drake, thank you so much, man, and really, you're so much fun to watch, and man, a lot ahead for you guys, and it's just amazing to see how this is taking off.
Thank you, Sean. This is an amazing honor, and I appreciate it. Like I said, you were the voice of many of my Saturday mornings, so very much appreciated.
You know, folks, boy, Eli Drake, just another great performer that I look at, and I wonder, how mega stardom didn't happen for him. And please, don't get me wrong. I mean, he's had a fantastic career, as you heard. But, things happen along the way that swing the pendulum of fate. And sometimes it doesn't swing your way, it swings the wrong way. And, he certainly got walloped a few times along the way, but really has just had a great career. Regardless, it is clear that he's enjoying his current path that he's on in the ring with all the new opportunities with the NWA. And I absolutely enjoy my conversation with Eli Drake. We will definitely have him back on. Once again, I want to remind everybody, check out the YouTube channel, Primetime Mooney. We've been putting up a lot more content as of late. And, we're doing stuff with the video. With the Skype video interviews that we have, that are, it's basically the same podcast that you can get audio-wise when you download, but you can actually see it as we're chatting when you have time to actually sit down and watch something. I know that, like me, most of the time I'm listening to podcasts. I'm in my car. I'm out walking the beast, my rather large dog, and I'm out and about. But if you've got time, to check out some stuff on YouTube, man, go to Primetime Mooney. A lot of stuff that we keep putting up. New content all the time, clips. So that you can just catch certain big parts of our podcast that we've had up before. But check it out. Just go to YouTube and search Primetime Mooney, and that will all come up. You can follow us as well on Twitter and Instagram, real easy, at Primetime Mooney. Love to hear from you. You can email me. I do answer. Email me at primetimemooney@gmail.com. That's primetimemooney@gmail.com. And once again, if you download this podcast on iTunes, please subscribe. Also, give us a 5-star rating and a review. It helps out a lot so we can keep bringing you more and more content here on Primetime with Sean Mooney. But that's going to do it for this episode of PTSM. Thanks for listening, everybody. I'm Sean Mooney, and I am out.